The pregnancy test trembled in Zara's hands as two pink lines appeared, shattering the carefully constructed facade of their business arrangement. She was carrying the child of a man who had only married her to satisfy his grandfather's will and secure his billions. Marcus Blackwood, 38, had never imagined fatherhood in his future, especially not with the woman he'd married purely for financial gain. The stakes were catastrophic. His $4.2 billion inheritance hung in the balance if their marriage ended before the 90-day contract expired, but now an innocent life complicated everything. How could a man who'd never known true love suddenly become responsible for a family he never wanted? The question burned between them like wildfire as Zara stood before him, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for this to happen," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible in the cavernous penthouse living room. At 26, she had taken the contract marriage offer to pay for her mother's cancer treatments, never expecting intimacy to develop between them. Her simple cotton dress seemed out of place against the backdrop of Manhattan luxury that surrounded her. "I understand if you want to end this now." Marcus paced across the marble floor, his tailored suit jacket discarded, tie loosened. The sharp angles of his face caught the fading sunlight through floor-to-ceiling windows. "End it? Do you understand what's at stake here? My grandfather's will explicitly states I must remain married for 90 days to access my inheritance. We have 47 days left. And I have a life growing inside me that didn't ask for any of this," Zara countered, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of city traffic below. Their arrangement had begun simply enough. Marcus needed a wife to satisfy his grandfather's final stipulation, that the notorious bachelor settle down before receiving his inheritance. Zara needed money for her mother's experimental treatment. The contract was straightforward: appear as a loving couple for 90 days, then part ways with a generous settlement. Neither expected the walls between them to crumble. The first night they shared a bed, purely for appearance when his family visited, Marcus had been shocked to discover Zara was inexperienced. "You've never," he had asked, pulling back from what was meant to be a performative kiss for his visiting cousin. "Never found someone worth giving that part of myself to," she had admitted, her eyes downcast. "Does that change our arrangement?" That revelation had shifted something fundamental between them. Marcus found himself drawn to her authenticity in a world where everyone wanted something from him. One night, after too much wine and genuine laughter, their pretend affection had transformed into something real, and now, consequences stared them in the face. "We need to talk about options," Marcus said finally, his voice softer than before. "This changes everything." Zara looked up, hope and fear battling in her expression. "What are you saying?" Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang, his grandfather's attorney. "Mr. Blackwood, we need to discuss an urgent matter regarding your inheritance. There's been a development." The attorney's news was devastating. Someone had contested the will, claiming Marcus had entered a fraudulent marriage. If proven true, he would lose everything, not just the money, but the company his grandfather had built from nothing. The board meeting was scheduled for tomorrow morning. His entire legacy hung by a thread. Who would do this? Zara asked, her hands trembling as Marcus relayed the news. "My cousin James," Marcus replied grimly. "He's always resented that grandfather chose me to lead the company. He stands to inherit if I'm disqualified." That night, they stayed up late, rehearsing their love story, filling in gaps in their knowledge of each other. What had begun as strategic preparation evolved into genuine connection as they shared childhood memories, dreams, and disappointments. "Why did you never marry before?" Zara asked as midnight approached. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I watched my parents' marriage disintegrate. My father cheated repeatedly. My mother drank to cope. Love seemed like a business transaction with terrible returns." He looked at her directly. "Until now." The words hung between them, neither willing to examine them too closely. The board meeting the next morning was tense. 12 stern faces studied them as they entered the conference room hand in hand. James sat among them, a barely concealed smirk on his face. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood," the chairman began, "we have concerns about the nature of your marriage that we hope you can address." For 2 hours, they answered questions about how they met, their courtship, and their future plans. When asked why she fell in love with Marcus, Zara found herself speaking truth instead of rehearsed lines. "I didn't expect to. I thought he was just another wealthy man used to getting his way," she said, looking at Marcus. "But then I saw how he leaves notes for the housekeeping staff thanking them by name. How he calls his grandfather's old friends just to check on them. How he looks at the world as something to improve, not possess." Her voice softened. "He makes me want to be better. Isn't that what love should do?" The room was silent. Even James looked taken aback. "Well," the chairman finally said, "unless there's concrete evidence to the contrary, I see no reason to doubt the authenticity of this marriage." As they left the building, Marcus pulled Zara into a nearby park. "That was..." he began. "Acting," she finished for him, though the word felt hollow. "Was it?" he asked quietly. Before she could answer, his phone rang, his assistant. "Sir, there's been a leak to the press about the board meeting. Reporters are gathering at your penthouse." That evening found them in a modest hotel in Brooklyn, far from the luxury Zara had grown accustomed to. As night fell, they found themselves sharing the small bed out of necessity, their conversation turning unexpectedly intimate. "I never told you why I've never been with anyone before," Zara said in the darkness. "You don't have to explain," Marcus replied. "I want to," she insisted. "My father abandoned us when I was 7. My mother worked herself to exhaustion raising me alone. I watched her give everything to men who took and took until there was nothing left." She took a breath. "I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable like that unless I was absolutely certain." "And then you signed a contract to marry a stranger," Marcus said softly. "For my mother," Zara clarified. "The only person who never let me down." "Until that night," Marcus said, and they both knew which night he meant. "Yes," Zara admitted. "Until then." "Why me?" he asked, the question barely audible. Zara was silent for a long moment. "Because for the first time, I saw someone who might be worth the risk." When his lips met hers in the darkness, there were no witnesses to perform for, no roles to play. Just two people finding something real in the most unexpected place. Morning brought reality crashing back. Marcus's phone wouldn't stop ringing, his PR team, the board, reporters seeking comment. The story had exploded overnight, with speculation running rampant about their arrangement. Then came the devastating news: someone had leaked what appeared to be their actual marriage contract to the board. The emergency meeting was scheduled for the following day. "It has to be James," Marcus said, pacing their hotel room. "He must have bribed someone for access to my safe." "What do we do now?" Zara asked. Marcus stopped pacing, his expression resolute. "We fight back." That afternoon, they returned to the penthouse to find the contract indeed missing from Marcus's safe. As they debated their next move, an unexpected visitor arrived, Marcus's grandfather's former housekeeper, Eleanor. "I've been trying to reach you," the elderly woman said, clutching a sealed envelope. "Your grandfather gave me this before he died, with instructions to deliver it to you if your inheritance was ever contested." Inside the envelope was a letter and a USB drive. The letter, in his grandfather's handwriting, stunned them both. "Marcus, if you're reading this, someone has challenged your right to inherit. I always knew James might try something like this. The true test was never about staying married for money, but about finding someone who would make you question whether money was what mattered most. The USB contains evidence of James's embezzlement from the company over the past 5 years, insurance, in case he ever tried to take what's rightfully yours. But ask yourself, has this marriage, however it began, shown you what truly matters in life? That was always my hope for you." The USB drive contained irrefutable evidence of James's financial crimes, enough to not only secure Marcus's inheritance but potentially send his cousin to prison. "We could end this now," Marcus said, holding the drive. "Present this at tomorrow's meeting, destroy James, secure the inheritance." Zara studied his face. "Is that what you want?" Marcus looked at her, then at the evidence in his hand. "What I want," he said slowly, "is to stop living a lie." The next morning, they entered the board meeting hand in hand. James sat smugly at the table, the marriage contract displayed on screens around the room. "Before you begin," Marcus said, addressing the chairman, "I'd like to say something." He took a deep breath. "The contract you see is authentic." Gasps filled the room. James's smug expression transformed into triumph. "Zara and I did enter into a contractual marriage to satisfy the terms of my grandfather's will," Marcus continued. "But what neither of us anticipated was that somewhere along the way, this arrangement would become the most real thing in my life." He turned to Zara, taking both her hands in his. "I've spent my life chasing my grandfather's approval, building wealth I never really wanted, running a company that was his dream, not mine. Then you came along, the one person who saw me, not my name or my money." His voice broke slightly. "And now you're carrying our child, a life we created together." Murmurs rippled through the room at this revelation. "I don't care about the inheritance," Marcus declared, looking back at the board. "I don't care about the company. What I care about is building a life with the woman I love, a life based on truth, not contracts." James stood, triumphant. "Well, that's a touching speech, cousin, but it doesn't change the facts. You violated the terms of the will. The inheritance is mine." "Not quite," said a voice from the doorway. Harold Winters entered, carrying a folder. The will stipulated that Marcus must be married for 90 days. It said nothing about why he got married. He approached the table. "Furthermore, I have evidence that James has been embezzling from Blackwood Industries for years." As Harold presented the evidence, James's face drained of color. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. "This meeting is adjourned pending a full investigation," the chairman announced. "Mr. Blackwood, James, I suggest you contact your attorney immediately." As the room cleared, Marcus and Zara remained, still holding hands. "You were willing to give it all up," Zara said wonderingly. "Billions of dollars, the company, everything." "None of it matters without you," Marcus replied simply. "I entered this arrangement thinking I was buying time. Instead, I found the rest of my life." In the weeks that followed, James faced criminal charges for embezzlement. The board confirmed Marcus's inheritance, but to everyone's surprise, he announced his intention to step down as CEO of Blackwood Industries. "I want to focus on what matters," he explained at the press conference, Zara by his side. "The Blackwood Foundation will now dedicate itself to funding cancer research and treatment for families without resources." As their 90-day contract neared its end, Marcus took Zara to the small park where they had shared their first honest moment after the initial board meeting. "Our contract expires tomorrow," he said, taking her hands in his. "There's nothing binding you to me now, except whatever you might feel." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "I never expected this. A temporary solution to my problems that became the answer to questions I didn't know I was asking." "I have a new contract to propose," Marcus said, dropping to one knee and presenting not a document but a ring. "This one's for a lifetime, if you'll have me." 6 months later, they renewed their vows, this time without contracts or conditions. Marcus had stepped back from daily operations at his company to focus on their growing family and the foundation they started together. Zara's mother, now in remission, sat in the front row, beaming through happy tears. Eleanor, the housekeeper who had delivered the crucial letter, was there too, proudly holding the honorary title of grandmother to the baby on the way. As they exchanged vows that were heartfelt rather than rehearsed, Marcus whispered to Zara, "Thank you for showing me that the richest man isn't the one with the most in his accounts, but the most in his heart." Their story spread far beyond their circle, touching countless lives with its message about authentic connection in a world obsessed with appearances. The foundation they established helped hundreds of families facing cancer, turning personal pain into purpose. When their daughter was born, they named her Hope, a testament to what had blossomed from the most unlikely beginning. Marcus, once known for his ruthless business acumen, became famous instead for his devotion to his family and philanthropic work. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Zara asked one evening, as they watched the sunset from the terrace of their new home, smaller than the penthouse but filled with warmth and laughter. "Never," Marcus admitted, cradling their sleeping daughter. "I thought I was signing a contract for financial security. Instead, I signed up for the greatest adventure of my life." Zara leaned against him, content. "Some contracts are meant to be broken. And some," Marcus said, kissing her softly, "lead to commitments far more binding than paper could ever hold." Their journey from a cold business arrangement to a family built on love reminded everyone who heard their story that sometimes life's greatest treasures come disguised as temporary arrangements. That authentic connections can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances. And that the heart, when finally opened, can draft terms no lawyer could ever conceive. If this story of unexpected love and transformation touched your heart, remember that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings start with a leap of faith. Life's greatest contracts aren't signed on paper, but written in moments of courage when we choose love over fear, truth over convenience, and connection over isolation.